Hi, I'm Bethany. I've gathered a bunch of questions from Instagram, and today I'll be answering them. I'll be sharing a bit about what it's like to be a recorder player, my journey as a recorder player, and a few things that I know about this instrument. So I started when I was 3 when my mom signed me up for recorder and piano classes. I actually didn't come from a musical family. None of my parents or grandparents are musicians, so this whole journey was kind of unexpected. I think my mom chose the recorder because she thought it would be a good introductory instrument to get things started before my hands are long enough or strong enough to be able to hold a flute. Once I started elementary school, I focused on other instruments instead. I still play the recorder, but I didn't spend much time on it. The turning point was when I was around 12. For a bit of context, I have an elder brother. Growing up, we went to the same elementary school. We shared mostly the same extracurricular activities. It's good to have a companion, but this could cause a lot of comparison sometimes. He's like this famous high-achieving good student at school, so people usually see me as Andrew's sister instead of Bethany. I might be a bit oversensitive back then, but all of this kind of caused me to have a low self-esteem, and I always wanted to find something special about myself. When I was 12, my brother started studying abroad, and at that point he no longer played the recorder, which meant I no longer have the burden and fear of being compared to when I play the instrument. Because he was studying abroad, my mom always had to fly out to visit him, so that meant that I had a lot of free time at home, and I started watching a lot of TV. Very naturally though, I started taking out my recorder and started playing along to songs I hear from the TV. Slowly, I started making these one-woman band recorder ensemble arrangements of those songs. It was during this time that I realized that the recorder is the instrument that allows me to express myself the most freely. My teacher knew about this and she started teaching me more advanced techniques and more advanced repertoires. We started entering larger scale competitions and things started to get really serious from then on. I actually don't know the exact total number of recorders I have, but here in Boston I have 4 with me. I have this alto recorder. This is the Ripper Grenadilla alto recorder. I got it here in New England actually. I got it at the QnA workshop. I like it a lot. I use it all the time in my performances nowadays. And then I have this. It's another alto recorder. It's a Merc alto recorder. I've had it for quite a long time by now. It's very light and it's like my good old friend. And then this is a soprano Kinsuka recorder. The shape is slightly different. We use this to play late Renaissance music a lot. And then I have another soprano recorder with me. Back in my hometown, I have a few more sopranos, a few more altos, a tenor, a bass, and a few sopraninos. So I guess the total number of recorders I have would be around 10 to 12. It's actually very common for recorder players to have a big collection of recorders. It's kind of needed to be able to play a whole range of music. Also, there are different kinds of wood used to make different recorders. Some woods are softer wood, like the maple wood, whereas grenadilla, this one is grenadilla, it's a much harder wood. Each type of wood has its own individual timbral characteristics, so recorder players have their own preferences on which to use when performing different repertoires. In terms of price ranges, it really depends. It depends on the type of wood. Some are very rare. It also depends on the density of the wood, because that affects the manufacturing process of it. Some recorders are handcrafted. A lot of them actually are handcrafted, so that also affects the cost of the recorder. Since this question is from a fellow live electronic performer, I would say that this recorder that I'm holding right now, this is the recorder from Von QnA Workshop. This is approximately the same as a Push 3 standalone. This is a question that I get asked a lot. There's a whole range of repertoires and recorder music is still constantly evolving, so I will try my best to give a macro view of the repertoires. I guess I'll do it in chronological order, so starting from medieval music, which I mean Western classical music in the period of 500 to 1400. A lot of the music from that period of time is vocal music, so they're not composed exactly for the recorder, but a lot of them are really great to play on the recorder. I'd recommend checking out the works of Hildegard von Bingen, who I believe is the first known woman composer. There are also medieval dance pieces from Italy and France, which I really enjoy playing on the recorder. And then there's also a whole range of Renaissance music that is great to play on the recorder. However, I'd like to quickly jump in time to this very important composer for recorder repertoires. That is Dutch composer Jacob van Eyck, who is from the beginning of the 17th century. He is actually completely blind and he improvised a lot. He took popular tunes of the days, like religious tunes and folk tunes, and he would improvise upon them. His composition is very beautiful and he wrote really great variations of the tunes. At some point, someone notated all of his improvisations, and there comes the Flautenlusthof, which is a huge collection of solo recorder pieces. In early Baroque, there are Italian composers like Fontana and Castello. Later in the period, there are recorder concertos by Vivaldi, the cantata Ti alla Fiamme by Handel. Handel also has sonatas written for the recorder. And then we also have the Brandenburg Concerto No. 4 by J.S. Bach. And then Telemann himself was also a professional recorder player, so he also has some recorder concertos written for the recorder. And then there are less in the classical and romantic period, so I will jump straight to the contemporary pieces. I wouldn't say this is the best way to categorize music from this period of time, but there are some pieces that are more melodic, there are some pieces that are more atonal, and then there are some that features more extended techniques like whistle tone, sputato. That is a whole other realm. My favorite contemporary piece to perform is Ende by Louis Andriessen. I don't have a recording of my performance, but I have a photo of me performing that. This piece is written for 2 recorders but 1 player, so I had to hold 2 alto recorders and play different lines at the same time. My favorite memory... Oh, this is hard. If I could only pick one, it would be my first time at ORDA. I've been there multiple times now, but the first time is the most unforgettable because it was my first time at an international recorder event. I also had one of my best performance experience there. I remember I was on stage and I looked at the audience. They were very attentive. They were actually smiling at me and like grooving along. It was also my first time that I felt I was truly connecting with the audience. And this feeling kind of changed how I approached performing afterwards. I also went to a lot of exhibitions there. I tried a lot of recorders that I've never seen before, like the contrabass recorder, the LED, the Dream recorder, and I remember watching the concerts too. I remember watching the Royal Wind. It was my first time seeing a recorder consort. I also watched Spark the Classical Band. That was actually very important. I think watching their performance kind of sowed the seeds in me that I want to arrange in contemporary styles and I want to be able to do like dynamic performances, which both are things that I do quite often nowadays. Looking back, I had a lot of wonderful memories and I'm so grateful to have had this experience in my life. This question is from someone that I met back in my high school times. That was also my craziest recorder times. So I thought maybe I could share a bit about that. When I was 16, I had a lot of performances and competitions lined up. Some of them are overseas, some of them are local. For a bit of context, I went to a high school that is very rigorous academically, so it was very stressful for me to balance my academics and musical endeavors. I had a very packed schedule back then. I woke up at 4:30 every morning, and I would practice until 7:30. That's when I have to leave home for school. It's very early in the morning, and I don't want to wake my neighbors up, so the way I did it is I would take a piece of post-it or sticky note, and then I will fold it into a rectangular shape, so something like this. And then I'll put it into the slot of the recorder. It will act like a mute, so I wouldn't wake my neighbors up. During this time, I would practice the very technical stuff like finger and tongue coordination, practicing with the metronome. I leave home for school at 7:30 and I finish school at 4. But usually after school, I have non-music related extracurriculars, stuff like Model United Nations, debate. I usually get home at 7, so 7 to 10 is the only time I could play out loud in full volume. During this time, I'll practice all the stylistic details, interpretation stuff, dynamics, intonation, articulation, everything basically. Quiet hour starts at 10, so I'll finish my homework for school and study for test. usually until 1:30 in the morning, and then the next day I wake up at 4:30 again, and this goes again. There's also a lot of catch-up work to do whenever I had to miss school for overseas performances, so it was indeed a busy schedule, but thinking back now, I think those were probably the most productive days in my life. This reminds me of a time when I was performing on a TV show. The temperature in the dressing room and the temperature in the actual shooting studio was very, very different, and I wasn't warming my recorder. So when I moved from one room to another, it clogged up immediately, and when I played my first phrase, it was horrible. So I learned my lesson, and whenever I move from one environment to another, I will always warm my recorder. So I started playing the EWI when I started doing more live electronic performances. I wouldn't say it's a transition, it's more like an addition to my arsenal. There are some sets where I play the recorder in one section and then play the EWI in another section. I love doing that a lot, actually. It's funny how my friend called it an era. I think the recorder era kind of brought me to the current era that I'm in. It helped me build a solid foundation in musicianship. When I was playing the recorder, I always craved for more. I wanted to be able to arrange, write my own music, do more dynamic performances, and I think that kind of led me to eventually finding my way to electronic performance. Nowadays, my art is more inclined towards music technology, but the recorder is always a big part of who I am as a musician, and as I said just now, I still always play the recorder in my live electronic sets. No matter what era I'm in, music making will always be the essence of it.